absolutely, because it's my vintage. And I was in another country though, so I did go to an all-girls high school, so all of that is familiar, but different gender. Yeah, it rings true for me.
Was there a particular character that you felt like you knew, even though you went to an all-girls school, like just kind of the same vibe?
I think all of them, because it doesn't matter of gender. There's always a range of characters in every scenario, in every class. There's always the clown, the academic, it's always there.
There's always a Kuntz, there's all...
Yes.
How about you, Mark? Was there a specific part of the Holdovers that really took you back to school? What was that?
Well, for me, I'd say there's a traumatic part because I had 5 years of Latin. And there was a good deal of classics baked into that. And 2 of those years were repeating years for me. So, yeah. So that's a little tough, and I'm desperately trying to translate every line in there as it went by. But I'd say, coming from the composer, not a surprise that also the music for me really resonated. I'm a little young for it, born in '68, but my older brother and sister, who I kind of idolized, were both heavy into the music that's peppered throughout. So the source score is fantastic. It was a great thing to have to write around.
We'll try to limit our use of Latin in this press conferences to not put
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Kevin? Is there a specific part of the Holdovers that was just like an instant recall?
I also, so I was a little younger in '71, so that's not exactly my time, but it's very reminiscent of it. And I think, and I've said this to Wendy, the costumes, the clothes, and the music that we use, the source cues and stuff like that, really remind me of my old high school days. I didn't go to an all-boys school or anything like that, but people haven't changed that much, really. There's still punks in high school, no matter what era, even 1971 or 70.
That's true. Everybody should quote him on that. There are still punks. That's the truth. David, I mean, this is obviously straight from your mind script-wise. And is there a specific moment in it, though, that is that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I lived most of that movie, and certainly the interpersonal dynamics, and separate apart from the relationship between Paul and Angus, which I think is sort of one of my life experiences with my uncle, but that kind of king rat trading at the top of the movie that starts with the swimsuit, and it's like, how much for this weed, that kind of thing. That kind of dealing in contraband naughtiness is something that definitely resonates for me, because you're it's part of the thrill of being young, where you're sort of like trying to find yourself, trying to be adult, and that kind of swapping and trading and sort of undercover light misbehavior. Let's call it light misbehavior. Reminds me of high school, I think, the most.
Where does the expression "king rat" come from?
Isn't that a George Segal picture? I think there's a George Segal picture about the guy in the prison camp who can get anything for anybody. Yeah. There's always a king rat in high school.
A fine reference.
Yeah.
That's the thing of that. What's your name? David Hemingson. That's the thing about him. He's always there with the bon mot. I mean, people are. I'm just getting a lot of like, "Wow, yeah, you're with the script. It's so good." And I'm like, "Thanks, I didn't write it." And no, but the quotable insults and the little things that you insert into the screenplay and into your spoken conversation, I find quite delightful.
Thank you, sir. The Baroque profanity. Yes.
Here's another one.
Actually, I don't want anyone out there to be encouraged to spoil anything that in the end of this movie for anyone, but there is an insult that Paul Giamatti hurls at the end of this movie that was so deeply satisfying. I actually hollered.
I'm glad.
Now, was that something that was there from draft one, or did that come about later when you really figured out how to stick it to that headmaster?
It's pretty early. I mean, a lot of his character is based upon my uncle, a guy named Earl Cahill, who was a World War II vet and served on Saipan and raised me when my folks split. And he was born in 1920, and I always thought of Paul, in my mind, Paul was born in 1920, yeah. So if Paul was born in 1920, I think he had the same vernacular as my uncle, and so I just sort of channeled this This guy was this incredibly erudite, but also incredibly coarse, kind of bald dude with these jug-handle ears and these Buddy Holly glasses. But he had this incredible gift for, you know, this rarefied profanity, and so I just sort of channeled that and put that into Paul.
God, it was good and it was satisfying. I was taking
Fun,
notes.
right? I like that insult.
Oh, devastating. Alexander, what
I hope the
specific?
legal clearance department doesn't try now to track down Earl's descendants and get them
Oh no, it's
to
okay.
sign
We're
off.
super tight. We're super tight. I'm super
Yeah,
tight with
right.
family. They're all copacetic. They're all copacetic.
Alexander, what is the part of this script that really takes you back to school specifically?
Not necessarily just school, but that period. Maybe three things. First is, yes, like Mark Orton, Latin class. I was 4 years in Latin class at an all-boys Jesuit school in Omaha. I'm still tight with my friends from Latin class, and there are some in-jokes woven into those scenes that only they will get. Second, I was 9, turning 10 in 1970 to 71. So I was young, but I had an older brother. I had two older brothers, one of whom was that exact same year, graduated Omaha Central High class of 71, which I didn't quite realize until later in the project. I'm making a film about that class. And when you're a much younger sibling, you live a lot vicariously through your older siblings, wanting to emulate them and adopt their taste and so forth. So I have vivid memories of that year. And then third, the thing, again, taking it out of school, is the movies of that period, because even at that age, 9 and 10, I was movie crazy. And for example, Little Big Man, Arthur Penn's Little Big Man, is featured in the film. It's appropriate to the time and the scene in which it's presented. But I saw it like 4 times in the theater when I was 9 years old. So it's not just the school thing, but a lot of contextual things bring us all back, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, this movie just evoked so many memories of so many great films of that time. Like, it pulls from like Hal Ashby. I was excited to hear that Walter Murch was consulted when you were bringing this to life. And I think that your movies always certainly evoke a sense of time and place, but this is your technical first period film. And so I wanted to ask you the most challenging and rewarding aspects of making a period film.
So let's be clear for the audience watching that it's not just a period film, but my collaborators and I here gave ourselves the thought challenge experiment of time traveling and pretending as though we were making a film shot in 1970 and 71, and that the final film looks as though it might have been produced then. And what that did was, I mean, particularly for Ryan and Wendy and me, was telling ourselves we're not making a period film, we're making a contemporary film, pretending we're in 1970. And to wit, we wanted the costumes and production design not to rub our noses in how period it is, but rather to be as banal and grimy and as though we were making a low-budget film then. And so that was both a challenge and a delight.
Now, Ryan, production design is such a huge part of this movie. Can you talk about approaching the challenge of creating the unique atmosphere and emotions of a New England prep school, especially during Christmas break and during this, period of time travel that you went to?
Yeah, I mean, that was a unique challenge because we had to shoot in 5 different schools and intertwine them together. But what we got to do and focus on, like Alexander pointed out, was to make it a little bit invisible. We wanted it to feel natural and never take you out of the scene, and always let the story be the star. And so for us, we always just led with our feeling on that. And so we let feeling and instinct lead the way. And we and Alexander like to spend a lot of time in each of the real environments with the real people that live there, and soak a lot of that in, and then intertwine that into the work that we do there.
And I read that you will put a lot of things on the set, even in places the camera can't see, just so the actor is fully immersed in the environment.
Tell him about Marcus. And,
Yes.
yeah.
Marcus Whitman is the set decorator, and me and him have a long history together. And me and him, yes, we dress every part of the set. So even if it's something that's not scripted, like a Paul's desk drawer or something that he's not supposed to open, we always dress it with period appropriate things that, in case he does in the moment, that he won't be taken out of the scene. So that's really important to us. And also, me and Marcus will always we'll be the last people in the set before it's handed over to Alexander and the shooting crew. And we spend hours in there living and laughing and putting our life and feeling into it, and then making sure that all feels right before we hand it over.
Is there a special item that stands out that you had put in there, like woven into it, that we might not even see on film? I'm just curious.
There is. Can we mention the piece that's in Paul's office?
Of course.
Yes. So there's a little Easter egg in Paul's office. There's a little sculpture by his desk that was also used in the Sideways, his Sideways set. Yeah. So there was little pieces like that we would add, and little touches, books that we thought he would like, and he was very hands-on about that, about what he would be into and what books would be placed next to his bed.
Is that mystery novel that we kind of hinge up from? We see his pipe and we come up off of Danny.
Fear Strikes Out.
Fear Strikes Out. Is that one of Paul's books, or is it
No.
what Paul Hunnam would have read?
Yeah, one he would have read, and also it became a Blake Edwards movie from the period. I thought it was a nice little nod.
That's it.
Can I ask you to ask Wendy the same thing, because she did a superhuman job with limited resources to get the costume right for the film.
Hey, listen, Alexander, if you want to do my job, go right ahead.
Do you want to phrase the question again?
Absolutely. I think, sort of something adjacent that I think of is that so often a period piece might feel costumey, or might feel like kind of reductive of an era, but this film really avoids that. And I was wondering, so tell me about your process of picking, what all of these different people at different times of their life would be wearing, that it feels like it is appropriate to the era, but it does not feel like a costume.
Yes, thank you for that question. And I think with working with Alexander for all these years, I have learned from him to do that. And some other great costume designers prior to my career have also said the same thing, that you always take one thing off. So you might dress the whole thing and then take one thing off. That, to quote Anne Roth. I feel it's really important to have naturalistic costumes that don't speak costume, and let the actor do the work. So you have to support the actor and the story and the personality and the character through the clothes. So let them do the speaking, or just let it be. And sometimes, in a fitting, you'll know what's wrong and you'll know what's right. So sometimes you can just tell. Sometimes, you have to keep working it. Sometimes it's there straight away. And this was an extraordinary feat to pull together because of the lack of resource. We had to keep finding clothes. Like there's a huge volume. Even in watching it last night, there's so many people in this movie. There's so many clothes, half of which don't appear on the screen. But the volumes were, I would look at my assistant and say, we've got to find more clothes. I'd go down to where the background was being fit and say, we don't have enough clothes. I'm sick of seeing this thing. We can't put that on anybody. It doesn't fit. And also, bodies are now very different too. So since the 1970s, we now have the advent of fast food. People's bodies have changed, and especially in Boston. So we don't have tiny, tiny people anymore. So that in itself is something. So, we were dealing with the volume. But I want to second Ryan, and I don't put people's clothes on, although I have put on Jack Nicholson's pajamas and broken them down personally. But in this one, I want to reference an Easter egg that nobody knows. Lydia Crane wears a heart-shaped necklace that Reese Witherspoon wore, the exact same one in Election.
Wow.
Why did
What do you know?
Can I
Oh my God, I love the Alexander Payne-averse.
Yeah, that's it. It's the Payneverse. I want to make one comment about the costumes because I grew up in New England, and I want to say I was amazed at how spot on, how incredibly consistent, and how historically accurate it was. It was incredible. And I also want to say that there's this wonderful combination because it felt real of jackets, like for example his chevron jacket, which I thought was beautiful, but it wasn't like